Welcome back, everybody. Glad you could join us today. As usual, sitting here with me is Sandy McKay. How are you?
Hey, Rob. I'm awesome. Excited to be back.
You don't sound that excited. I gotta, next time, it's almost like the dance monkey. Okay, go. Be more excited.
Yeah. Okay, we got to amp ourselves up more before the show then, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
we got to jump on the trampoline or something, get going.
Right.
Yeah.
I was doing jumping jacks just so I could get going before this. How are things?
Fantastic. Real estate's world is always fun and crazy, and this last little bit is no different, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've got some exciting news. We're planning an investor tour. Durham REI is going to join forces with me, and we're planning an investor tour here. It's most likely going to be in November. Don't have anything solid yet, but stay tuned for more info on that. It's probably going to be about 15. I think we'll cap it at about 15 people and come down and check out, what investing is all about in Costa Rica.
So that sounds pretty cool. You know what we should do? I'm going to put you on the spot a lot here, but we should maybe come up with some sort of a prize or something that someone could win, maybe partial payment or a free something.
Yeah, you are putting me on the spot, aren't
you? Yeah.
Well, no, I guess we'll just overcharge everybody else to make up
yeah.
No,
I don't know.
We don't have details yet. Maybe something like that. Sandy would like to foot the bill for somebody to come, so that's great. Thank you.
It could even be that. We'll figure something out. Something to give some value here and make people excited about checking out.
You know what? We should probably do something like that, you and I as well. Maybe organize something like that.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for that. So as usual, everyone go over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca. You can listen to all of our past episodes, get in touch with all the past guests through the links in the show notes, and get our free gift.
Yeah, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. And as well, as you all know, you will also get on our email list. You'll learn about upcoming events like we just mentioned. Maybe you're in some free stuff, and get on our newsletter. Never miss out on a show, and learn about everything else we got going on in our
Sandy's all about the free stuff today.
Yeah, I know.
He's getting generous. I don't know. He'll give his number at the end. You can just call and see what he's got to give away.
For sure. DM me on somewhere and we'll come up with something.
And go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. It really, really helps. It doesn't take long. Just go over, leave us a 5-star review, 4-star review. Whatever it is that you want to leave us, just let us know what you think and maybe give us some suggestions for upcoming guests or topics that we haven't touched on yet. But yeah, that really helps the show get out to more people. And I think that's it, right?
That sounds good to me. I mean, we got a couple other, I think we'll talk about this maybe next show, but we got a couple other kind of shows or some value-added extra content in the works that you and I were both working on. So we'll release that next show, but you'll have to tune in for the next episode to learn more details.
Do you have an event coming up?
Nothing major. No, nothing major.
Okay. Nothing to promote right now. All right. Let's get into it then.
Maybe that's the next episode thing as well.
Okay. Too soon. All right. Well, I'm very happy to have Michelle Gauthier with us today. It's been, I think, a long time coming for this interview. Yeah. So we're very happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got Michelle, along with her husband, Mike, started investing 12 years ago in real estate and always investing in whatever they could, mutual funds, RSPs, all that sort of thing. And they quickly realized that they made money on the appreciation of their home. They made more money on the appreciation of their home than any other mutual fund they had. And so over the years, they started investing more heavily in real estate. They invested in rent-to-owns, buy and holds, flips. Coming into this year, 2022, they had a portfolio of 60 doors. And the cool thing about that is 0 joint venture partners into 2022. So self-owned and funded one way or another, I suppose, on your own. And so that's pretty cool. That's a great portfolio. And we'll learn more about what you're doing with that and how you got there on this show. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you came on. I know that you say that you're not necessarily into the whole podcast thing, so I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing. And that's all we're here to do, not here to grill you or anything like that, just to learn about your story. And I think it's an exciting one. So again, thanks.
Well, thanks.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started, and tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then how you got started in real estate investing.
Well, I live in London. We live in our flip house. We never thought we'd live in London, but we ended up moving into a house that we started flipping and actually fell in love with it. So started out in Guelph, though. We were in Guelph for 20 some years. That's a little bit about me. To have 2 kids. They're older now. They're in their early 20s. So just doesn't get any easier as they get older, just different, right? So, yeah, my husband and I started investing, Mike, about 12 years ago, like you said, Sandy, and we just saw that we weren't making money in the mutual fund. Like we had dumped a lot of money into RSPs. We had tons of RSPs, did the whole employee mentality and, don't know much, invest in, what the financial advisor says, you keep dumping money here and there. And I'm like, we're not really making much money. We've made more money on our house going up here. And this was our simple, we weren't savvy investors. We weren't anything. And something popped up on my Facebook, which said, real estate education. And I'm like, So I said to Mike, let's go to this 2-hour, as cheesy as it seems. I mean, and, you don't promote any education company or anything like that, but we did it. We spent a boatload of money. And then, by spending that money, it really put the pedal to the metal for us and said, okay, we have to do something with this, and we, I like to say, they try to promote it as you're getting a university education in a very short period of time with these education programs. So needless to say, 12 years ago, we did it. We started investing, did a bunch of stuff, started out with rent to owns, did flips. We did buy and holds. That was kind of, and then we did a larger apartment building, and that was kind of what we had done at that point. And then just sort of rode out the next 12 years of just having them, we'll kind of get into, Rob and I talked a little bit before this, that we do not have partners and we've managed them on our own. So that was the choices we made. And we've just sort of kept our head above water all the time, and had to deal with ebbs and flows. And it's not an easy business for anyone who thinks it's just, you sit back and you cash your rent checks. It was a full-on business while trying to hold down full-time jobs for quite a while. So,
yeah. And I think that there's 2 sort of frames of mind. There's probably when you go to an event like what you went to, it sounds like one of the ones, like I've been to a lot of real estate events and not very many of them are actually too salesy, but it sounds like you went to one of the salesy ones, and not to say that doesn't offer like a ton of education. It probably does. But I think that there's 2 ways to come out of something like that. You come out and go, what a waste of time, what a waste of time and money. Or you go, darn, I spent a lot of money and I'm going to make this work.
Yep.
And I just think that there's something to be said for just go get some education on real estate. If you're listening to this, like an event, if you can join up in an event and go out and meet up with other people who are doing it, that's like priceless.
Yeah, well, back in the day, there was not a lot. Like, there's so much opportunity. YouTube, these podcasts, everything. There's so much opportunity out there for education without formal training. But back then, 12 years ago, it wasn't mainstream stuff. And so, yeah, and we just obviously made the decision to, we got to do something with the money we spent. So, so we did. But right now, there is a lot more information online that you can, but you're not playing with monopoly money at the end of the day. This is real money, and this is your hard-earned money. And you want to have some education behind you. You don't want to be, shooting from the hip, as that's dangerous.
Now, you mentioned that you had ebbs and flows and just kept your head above water. So I think that this is important to talk about the challenges that you had and how you overcame them. So can you talk about some of the bigger ones?
Sure. Yeah, no challenges. Well, we were employed when we started out, and we made a decision to not have partners. So just, getting financing, working with lenders, We did most of it with the big banks, actually. So we were lucky that way because we had some money, and it was back in the day when, the banks weren't as stringent as they definitely are now. So we were able to, financing always was a challenge, but also picking a strategy, I think was a challenge. Like we were a little bit all over the place, and looking back now, we did rent to owns, we did some flips in there. We sort of, you find a property and you say, okay, I can do this with it, I can do that with it. So because we had all this education, we were kind of, we could do multiple things, which is a good thing in on one hand, but on the other hand, we were a little bit all over the place. So, but rent to owns, and back to the rent to own conversation, rent to owns were challenging because at the back end of rent to owns is always getting people qualified. And, you go into these things thinking, okay, you're taking people's money, and we don't take that lightly. We definitely, try to work with people to get them, to be these homeowners, because we didn't want these houses. And that was challenging, because we all know that the rules change on the fly when it comes to lenders. Today it's this percentage qualification that, and they didn't have stress tests back then. They were 5% down, and then CMHC said if you're coming out of a rent to own, 10% down, and so we're always pivoting with rent to owns, and it did become challenging.
And so you guys did it where you would find the tenant first and qualify them, and they would go shopping and pick a house that they liked.
Correct.
And then the idea is that in the usually 3 years, they would fix their credit, which is the whole reason they're doing a rent to own with you, and be able to qualify with the bank at the end of the 3 years.
Yep. Some of them were that. Some of them were, it's funny. And people say, I don't know how much you want to get into the rent to own conversation, but, we did some where we kept people in their house that for extenuating circumstances had to sell to us with the long-term goal of buying it back from us.
Right.
So that was an opportunity too. And they were made, that was rule number one when we got into, and when we did the rent to own conversation, and the education is don't keep people in their house. But it always did work out for us because they could sell us undervalue. They were buying it back undervalue. There was that cushion there that if things didn't go well, we were getting an undervalued property. But they were, we were able to get them qualified, and every rent to own has a story, right? Rent to owns are with lots of baggage and lots of stories, and everybody has a story. They're definitely there's no two that are cookie cutter. So my experience, but we didn't do a ton of them. We maybe did 25 of them, maybe total. Not well.
It's not nothing. It's not nothing.
Maybe I don't know. I've never really counted them up. There were enough of them.
Why was that? I guess your thought. I mean, you went through with it anyways and kept them in their homes. But why was it a thought not to do that originally? Was that some education, some advice that you'd been given, or because that seems like you're really helping and doing a good thing in that?
Yeah,
right?
Well, yeah, but they always say if people got into a situation, and it's like a marriage, going to marriage counseling, right? That, you're having problems, then you go, it's really, eventually it's going to happen again. So people get into a situation where they've had financial problems. They've got themselves into a space where they need to sell their property. But like I said, there's always a story. And are they going to fall back into their old ways? Because there's no pain there. There's no pain. There's no, taking them out of a house, putting them in another house, putting them in a smaller house. There's not that pain there. And
it's not a change of atmosphere, like an awakening where they're not able to stay there anymore.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that was one of the rules that we had, in our heads, but there was always a story, whether it was, there's always a story with these. Mm-hmm. And there was a reason why they got into that situation that is no longer a reason. So they just need time to get back on their feet. So.
Now, you mentioned financing also being one of the big challenges, and I think that's pretty common across the board when we talk about challenges. And that's something that people need to understand, is that these things aren't going to be easy, especially if you go down the route that Michelle went down, where you don't have partners. and you're trying to qualify and get the money for everything on your own, it's not just gonna, you're not just gonna call the same person at the same bank and get a yes. You're gonna have to talk about those challenges. It's not an easy thing, right?
No, it's not. It's not. And we did have to borrow private money too from time to time. Private money is, something that we had to do. But, our position on partners is just simplicity and not answering to anybody because, and we, there was a couple, like I'm kind of generalizing when I say no partners. Like I did have a little like a rent to own company, and we did bring in partners for that, like back in the early days and whatnot. But for the most part, our core business, Greenridge Properties, we did it all on our own, and you use private money when we needed to. So, just kind of, made it work. Because for us, like I said, simplicity and giving away 50% of the deal is something that, I guess, a lot of people could say you just really can't grow that way. And they're right. If you want to scale really large. But at the end of the day, I feel that someone else's money is even more sacred than our own. And if I had someone else's money that I had to, through joint venture partners, then that's a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That's to me, that's a huge responsibility. And I'd rather be a little bit risky with my own money and feel good about it and be able to sleep at night than somebody else's hard-earned money. So that was the route we both agreed
Yeah,
on.
it's definitely very stressful. And sometimes when things don't work out exactly the way they're supposed to, when I look back on, things that didn't go exactly the way they were supposed to, partners are definitely happy now,
Mhm.
but sometimes there's definitely a little bit of tension, right? So yeah, it's a trade-off, right? Can you keep growing on a larger scale? Definitely. But
Yeah.
it's like, is that what you want to do though? We've talked about that a lot too, Sandy and I, and it's like one person's journey is not the same as another. Just because you're a real estate investor doesn't mean that you have to buy X amount of units or you don't qualify and get out of the circle,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's a matter of what you want, like what kind of lifestyle you want. Do you want to deal with partners? Do you want that stress? Would you rather stay? I mean, it sounds like you guys have done amazing, so it's certainly not staying small. I think that's the wrong way to put it, but
Staying simple.
Yeah, staying simple. There you go.
Mhm.
So, and we talk about that a lot, right, Sandy?
Well, I was thinking too, a lot of people it's not too different than realtors, right? You get all caught up in the numbers and we're going to sell this many houses or we're going to buy this many houses. And, it's kind of, people get kind of intrigued or enthralled with that, hitting that big number. And,
Right.
People want to go on, in some cases in the real estate investment community, they want to go on stage and they want to talk about buying however many hundreds of houses or thousands. And that can be good. It can also be a realtor world. We see this a lot where that often doesn't mean a lot of net profit or the margins really aren't that great at the end of the day. And that's what you're eating into when you take on partners. Usually you're getting, a 50% hit on the, I mean, you could argue both ways because it's 50% of nothing potentially, or
better than, yeah.
But at the end of the day, private money at, let's say 15%, give or whatever that number is for a short term, and you own it 100% afterwards, is a lot cheaper in the long run than 50% ongoing forever.
100%, as long as you know what you're doing, right? Because I've seen people too that over leverage and borrowing at 15 to 20%, and the whole pyramid comes falling down, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah,
but I mean that kind of thing certainly sells podcasts, and it sells, like, it's very flashy, and it's very people are drawn to that kind of thing because we've talked to people who have done that kind of stuff, and that's not to say it's the wrong way, but we've certainly talked to people, and the podcast headline is how so and so bought 12 properties in 12 days, right? So and that one
doors,
definitely
right?
gets a lot more downloads,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
But,
it does, and
yeah.
everybody thinks, wow, I can do that. I mean, and that's great, but I mean, times aren't going to be, I dusting off my crystal ball here, right? But times I don't think are going to be as lucrative. Like everybody who bought 144 doors in 1 year or whatever, they look like brilliant stars, and they are, but the market helped out. Let's face it. The market has been, a major player to success, all these of a lot of people, us included, right? But now comes the challenging part, I think, in the next few years, where all of a sudden, I think, you can't just, you just can't buy it a 3 cap and be successful, right?
We've talked to a lot of people too, Rob, right, who have looking back had said, I wish I did way less partnerships, or I wish I never did any of those partnerships. And they bought, I can think of a couple of our interviews where they, buying 50 plus properties a year and saying that was a terrible decision because it just blew up their life, and not just their investment side, but their whole outside of business life, and just ruined their lives in many ways for a short term. And case by case, right? It's worth it for some people. It's not worth it for others. Hindsight's 2020. You can kind of learn through it and go on your way. But the psychology of money, I was just looking up with that book. There's a great book around kind of that topic of how everyone's different and everyone uses money differently. Everyone wants and has higher risk tolerance than others, etc. It's a really good book. Morgan Housel, however you say the last name, is the author. Read that one in the last year or so. It's like The Psychology of Money.
Okay.
It's a newer book. It's only out in the last 1 to 2 years, but really good on that topic. Exactly, just of how to gauge where your tolerance might lie and what might work for you. Go big or go small on your own, and lean, or there's no right answer.
Mm-hmm. And lean's a big one too, right? Because the more doors you get and the more partners you get, it's not just you, a bookkeeper, and and it's a whole team behind you. It's a whole team. And then, there's salaries and there's expenses there. And, that all eats into it.
Yeah. There's also implications of working with partners who have other partners, right, under the same umbrella. So there's all kinds of complications. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, geez, like we've always said, we said this 100 times. As soon as you decide to be a real estate investor, guess what? All the challenges that are possibly in real estate investing now get thrown in front of your path, and you've got to figure out how to navigate them. So that's just what happens, right?
Mm-hmm. You manage your units yourself, I believe, still. Is that right? And
yes.
And why have you always done that yourself? Have you leveraged property management or aspects of property management at times, or
we did
why
at
or why not?
times. When we first started out, we thought that that's what we should do, and we did. And then we, found out that units weren't painted, and they were putting tenants in there that we didn't necessarily want. And we quickly figured out that what, even being 2 hours away from our properties, because we would buy, most of our buy and holds are in one market in Southern Ontario. So we just thought, what, at that point I had quit my job, Mike was still working, and we figured, you look at that line item and you say, it's a job, I can do it like anybody else can. So we just made that decision. It's not for everybody, but it put that line item back in our pocket, which made sense to us. And then we were able to, justify it, I guess.
And are your properties, you mentioned a lot, or most of them are in one market? Are they spread out much, or are they all in 1 or 2 locations?
They're in 1 or 2 locations. We actually sold 24 of them in January, 24 units.
Wow.
So,
wow.
24 units. How many properties would that be?
Well, that was six fourplexes we sold, and they were all on one street. So we just made the decision we had been doing it for a lot of years, upwards of 10 years on those properties. And it just was time with the market. One buyer came in, bought the whole thing. It just made sense to us. So we did it. And, we're honestly, it's about simplifying and about not looking back, and sort of doing a reset for Mike and I in terms of what do we want to do now? Do we want, because all those were like small, they were basically townhouses. When I say fourplexes, they were purpose built. They looked like each unit looked like a townhouse. Main floor, living room, kitchen, 3-bedroom or and a half bath on the main floor, and then 3 bedrooms, full bath upstairs, and then full basement, independent furnaces, independent hot water tanks, laundry room kind of thing. So they were independent townhouses, and there were 24 of them. So, and they were all 3 bedrooms. So it was
very,
a good,
very lucrative decision by the
yes.
sounds of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's like yeah, exactly. If you could, looking back, you probably couldn't have timed it more perfectly, really. We got rid of a couple right at that time too. So that it was definitely a good time, I think. And a lot of times I look back on selling places and I'm not super pumped on the ones that I've sold, but I think I honestly think that we couldn't have timed it more perfectly like what you did this time. So
we're always going to look back and say, I'm already looking back and saying we could have got more because the market did go up after we signed the deal. But, we'll all do that. But at the end of the day, like we've learned not to get emotional about things. Like I talk to real estate investors that would never sell anything, and every single property that they sold, they regret. But I mean, we got our time back. Yes, we were self-managing. We could have outsourced it, but nobody, I believe, and this is a statement that everybody can blast me for, nobody cares about your properties the way you do.
Well, nobody would. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I don't care, and it just by moving that out of our lives, it was such a breath of sigh of relief, and we can look at new things. We can look at, new strategies, new things we want to do.
So you didn't have, okay, I know you've already answered this, but like it just blows me away. How is it that you manage all these properties yourself? Like, because to me, that's more stressful than working with the partners, like working with the tenants, all those tenants, 66 doors is a lot of.
Well, some are buildings, right? And some yeah. But
there's still units
it was definitely,
inside.
Mike used to say when he drove onto the street, he was like the ice cream man. So they would come running out and like, I need this, I need this, I need this. We had systems and processes in place to simplify our life with respect to, management of these things, like, and complaints and whatnot. So that by putting processes in place for tenants, then they just couldn't, ask for stuff. They had to put it in a system, and there had to be a work order created, and they could see. So a lot of it was, systems on the back end. But it was a job. It was definitely a job. He was down dealing with stuff probably 3 to 4 days a week, dealing with those units. Most of them are one market. So, and they're older, right? They're built in the 70s. So
that's a really funny thought of all the tenants coming running out like he's the ice cream man.
Yeah,
I could see that. Was there like 1 or 2 of those tools that you said you were implementing there to make it a little easier? Was there 1 or a few of those that were like totally imperative that you really found?
Well, Buildium,
yeah.
Software, and we forced all the tenants to anything they wanted, any communication, everything went in Buildium. So, and we had a maintenance guy too. Like when I say we do have an on the ground maintenance guy that if you clicked a certain aspect in Buildium with respect to your request, his name was Paul. Paul would get a message as well, which filled him in on things so that if anything was urgent, he could deal with it too. So,
and he was like someone you had working only with you, or he worked with a bunch of different.
He worked with other people too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
but he was
not
more
someone on
maintenance
staff
versus
necessarily.
Management. Yeah, he was more maintenance. He was paid by the hour, that sort of thing. So so because you need somebody but if I could count on one hand how many times we had urgent calls where you had flooding basements, you had issues where you had to stop, drop, and roll basically and get down there, right? So for the most part, a lot of things could be dealt with, and simple things like for simple investors. And I know we're getting small and sort of into the details when I say this, but home hardware, there is a home hardware in every small town. set up an account at a home hardware for your company or your whatever, your personally, and then probably 40% of the requests can be fixed by making the tenant do the work on their own. Oh, I'll call ahead, go into home hardware, get this, get that. They go and take care of it. They pick it up if it's something small, whether it's ant traps, bug spray, toilet plunger, I don't care. I mean, if they can go pick up a $10 toilet plunger and I don't have to engage somebody to come out and deal with something because they just can't, you know, you're fixing 40% of the problems they're fixing on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah, for the little things for sure.
the little things, right? And those were just little things that we did just to, God helps those who help themselves. Help yourself, tenant, right? Go get it, right? Go get this. Have it ready for the handyman, whatever. So then it even just saved the time of the handyman coming and going and grabbing it. You know,
Yeah.
and make them do it.
And
right?
they're gonna charge you an hour. So even if like
Yeah.
like let's just say there's 4 whatevers to choose from, the tenant picks the most expensive one, it's still like
Well, usually home hardware, I would say, you know, get the cheapest one, get the cheapest door handle, whatever, or get the, you know, because I had an idea, get that, and then Mr. Tenant come pick it up, and then, you know, Mr. Handyman pop over when he's doing 5 other things and put it in or whatnot.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, but it's very, very cost
Simple,
effective
and
actually.
it's you know, this, we're talking about the details versus the big picture, but it's stuff that, you know, if you make a choice, you know, if people out there that have 1 or 2 units that don't want to pay for property management, that, you know, there's ways that you can really, you know,
That piece of information is what we call the golden nugget. That's what everyone's looking for when they listen. So I think so.
well,
Anyway, like
I thought it was always a good thing. It always worked
Yeah.
well for us. It always fixed. It saved a lot of money.
I've never done that. I just have my one guy, and anytime tenant calls me, I'm like, swing by, see what's going on, right?
Right.
And that's really handy too.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but
I love it for the small things because it
Yeah.
teaches the tenants a little bit about like, hey,
Some
like
life lessons.
because when you're gonna fix it all the time and it's the little things even, and you're like, don't worry, we'll come fix. Don't worry. Like it just never ends, right? They call about everything, and you're like, come on, there's a few ants. Go like get the ant thing and put it like,
or it's
go do that with yourself. It's not
or
a big
amazing how
deal.
it goes away, and the home hardware will call me 5 days later and say, hey, I still got this stuff held for, you know, this person. You still want it.
Right.
No, it went away, right?
Put it back on the shelf. Yeah.
When you make them do the work and you know, do something, you know, and I don't think I'm asking.
So if it's not worth the hassle for them, then they're not going to bother and ask you again, right? Too. I think it's so. One of the things that's always stuck with me is early on when I started going to Durham REI, I remember Quentin was talking about how he will, when he's bringing tenants in, right, to do a walkthrough before they move in, and he'd always say, okay, he would have a plunger beside the toilet and go, this is how you plunge the toilet, and he'd do it as a joke, right? But it's like, it's here, and this is how you do it. So, you know, don't call me if you need your toilet plugged.
That is a message beyond the toilet of
right.
Don't call me, you know. So
yeah.
No, it's definitely it fixed a lot of problems for us. So
great. Yeah, I love that. That's perfect.
And even building them, right? Like, no, don't text me. We don't accept texts. Only when they're getting the apartment am I texting them, until we make them a tenant. We set them up in the portal. They have a texting number. They have they can go and look at, they can print out their own rent receipts. They can do anything. And there's no more texting. And then it's an extra step for them to go and create a work order. And probably I don't know the numbers, 20%, 30% of the time that never even makes it in there, right? Because and as long as you're doing regular inspections, because you got to make sure that obviously then there's the other side of tenants that don't complain about anything. And then, oh yeah, this has been leaking 3 doors or 3 floors down for 6 months. I was going to get to telling you about that, but didn't really. So there's that tenant too.
True.
So you got to make sure you get the inspections done as well. Yeah.
So, but.
What do we have next here?
Well, what's happening for the future then? You said you're selling some properties, or you sold some properties.
Yeah.
Is that something you're doing more of? Are you going to acquire more? What are you doing with those? I mean, you said you're kind of simplifying life or putting it. Are you reinvesting some of that?
Yeah, like we're
some
looking
of that
at
money?
a reset right now. So we're really kind of we're kind of trying to figure out our direction. We're like, flowers in the wind right now, trying to figure out, where we want to go. We've been picking away at the possibility of buying some stuff out west. Bigger buildings, definitely bigger buildings. We would never do smaller stuff anymore. So there's that, and land development stuff. We've been looking at opportunities there, and lending. That's kind of our short-term go-to right now. In inflationary times, the worst place to have your money is sitting in cash. So we get it out there. We're getting it moving on short-term deals for investors, mostly on flip projects or when they're waiting for financing. So we're lending. We're lending a lot to sort of get that
That's
going.
good.
Term.
That's
Yeah.
good. Are you planning on like selling a bunch more of your stuff, or what's the
No,
plan there?
the ones that we have right now kind of fit in our portfolio, other than
Mhm.
one, but yeah, it's been a good property for us. So the bigger stuff we'll keep for now. Like we will keep. We have no intention of doing that. And then just like I said, a reset. We're not really sure. We're not really
It's so
sure.
funny.
We're looking at opportunities right now.
Uh-huh.
But there's
That
not.
implies so much, though. I love that. It's just like, well, they all fit into our lives now, except one. So should I ask? Should I ask?
Well, yeah, no, the one, because I don't want the tenants to ever see or think that, yeah, it's a duplex in Guelph that we had one of my kids living in for the longest time, and now we've rented it out to somebody else. We finally got him back home. So we'll keep that going. That's been a great property. Guelph has always been a great market for us. We've always had stellar tenants there. It's been that property's been a joy. So we'll keep that one. Yeah.
Cool. Lending, is that something that how does that work for you? Do you have people reaching out to you? Do you find the deals through brokers or something like
We
that, or
haven't
how do
used
you do it?
brokers. We definitely haven't used brokers. I mean, again, this is kind of saying this, and you're going to get all kinds of people disagreeing with me or saying we're not, doing it right. But hey, it's our money. We can do what we want, right?
Yeah.
So there's a place for brokers out there. They get paid, a couple points or a point, and then because we borrowed money before, and then the lender wants a point or a point and a half to go to the bank and get the money, and everybody gets rich on points or whatnot. We try to keep it simple. We don't use brokers. And everything's registered on title. We don't charge points right now. We don't charge any points. We just charge a simple interest rate. And we like the shorter term stuff. So, if somebody needs it for 68 days, yeah, our interest rates aren't low. But they're simple, right? Like there's, when people say, oh, well, I can get it for 9% and 3 points. Well, I'm like, well, work that out on your shorter term deal, right? I mean, you're actually paying 16% for your money, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so we love if people can, turn around and, maybe it's a wholesale deal where they're just buying and they're relisting. I just did one that I think it's 61 days from time of purchase to time of sale was 61 days. He paid for 61 days. That's it. Plus all of the fees, legal fees, right? So that's kind of how we do it. We only do first position. I'd have to be convinced on the second position. But
I'm
You
sorry.
mentioned
What's the LTV that you use?
it depends, right? Like it depends. If I've had borrower that's come to us with a sweet deal that there's $150,000 of equity in the buy, and then their plan is to put another 150 in renovations into it. So maybe we'll go up a little higher on the LTV than what a standard one. So I couldn't really say, Rob. It just depends on the
Deal
deal.
by deal. Okay.
Yeah.
you mentioned wholesale. Just I know maybe some listeners don't really know what that is. We talk about wholesale quite a bit. Wholesale, I don't know if we've really talked about it much. I mean, it's relatively similar, but you want to just
Yeah,
what that
we
is?
did a lot of wholesales last year. We did like 13 of them.
And the market going up, up and up and
Yeah,
up and
like
up, right? The wholesales
yeah.
becomes a good
So the
option.
wholesale, we always buy from wholesalers when we buy. So, and then if we can come in, we can clean it up, do minimal, like minimal. When I say, the definition of a true wholesale is nothing, but there's never nothing. But to me, if we can call the roof guy and call the dumpster and junk guys, and that's the extent of it, I still consider that a wholesale deal. So you're throwing on a new roof and you're cleaning out a bunch of junk, and bringing in a cleaner, and then you're relisting it, and that's it. And that's to me would be a wholesale deal, and you're always going on market with it on the back end. A lot of times flippers would buy them. They would buy them, and then they get into, it's funny, we did one wholesale deal we didn't know the investor that bought it, but we do now. And he's like, why did you sell that? Like, and we made like 50, I think, on it. And then he made an extra 80. Maybe we should have not been so, blindsiders to say, but, I mean, we were able to get our money and recycle it again in
Mm-hmm.
3 times for the amount of time it took him to do that flip.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And that's the same as saying, like, to flippers who have been flipping for the last 5 years, it's like, why bother doing anything? If they just held on to the entire portfolio of everything that they bought, and didn't sell it until January of this year, they would have made 10 times as much money and done zero work. So,
but they don't.
It's all just, you can look back and say you could have done a bunch of things differently.
Yeah, if we would have held on them a bit longer or whatever, but we wanted to get them out. And and I don't think wholetailing personally is a strategy that is going to be that successful in the next couple years, because people are going to want more finished products, and maybe there'll still be a market depending on how cheap it is, right? For the flipper, there's still going to be flippers out there that still need flippable properties. So who knows?
And part of the risk on the flip, though, is the time in it, right? You never know what could shift. As if you're buying in January, February, maybe even early March this year, in at least Southern Ontario, a lot of flip projects might be, people might be a little stressed about them right now, potentially, if they didn't get them at a good enough deal. Whereas the wholesale, you could have got in and out within a month, 2 months.
You get in and out, with a wholesale what the market's going to look like, because you're in and out real quick. We're sitting on 2 big flip projects right now that we're doing, that we're not panicking a little because we got them for a great price, but I don't think we're going to they're not going to be the huge home run that if we would have turned around and just sold them right away, we probably would have made more money than doing the big renos that we're doing. But we kept people employed, and we have contractors that all got paid, so we'll.
Yeah, that's the machine. Okay, let's talk about a piece of info or advice that's always stuck with you and how it's helped you.
Yeah, you know what? There's so many, but I mean, I just see a lot of, especially the little guys, right? They're going for the shiny penny, right? So, Sudbury looks good, and then we buy one in Hamilton, and then there's one down in Windsor, and I see that they're buying these small multifamilies all over the place. I think you should figure out it doesn't have to be your local market. I know that that's the comfort for everybody, because they know the streets, they know the market, but go find a market that, whether it cash flows, something that makes sense, where the numbers make sense, and then just learn the market, try to buy in the market. That goes back to that whole home hardware thing. Whereas, if you can get a few properties, and then you can set up a network, whether it's property management or maintenance or whatever, and then, you can be successful in that market.
Well, that's even been our mentality, sort of, when I say our, I mean my team, in Durham, Peterborough, as agents, right? Where we'll focus on just a couple of markets, and that way when people call and ask questions like, can I duplex this legally? Or what do I need to do in order to duplex this legally? Or can I do a student rental here legally? And all that kind of stuff. Then we can just go, yeah or no, right? Just look at the property, look at the listing and go yes or no. But when it's outside of those areas, I don't know. There's too much more work that I need to do to figure out the answer. So it's sort of the same idea.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. No, it's definitely important to learn a market.
And don't be all over the place because, well,
that goes with strategy as well too, right? Like, not to say that you've been super successful doing all kinds of different strategies, but it does help to have a little bit of focus.
Rinse and repeat. If it works and you're making money at it, just keep,
I think that's almost one of the themes for the show here is kind of just, there's a lot to be said about simplifying and making things as simple as possible and not overcomplicating and getting stuck in there's so many people that kind of try and do everything or try and get that shiny object syndrome going, and they dabbling in this, that, and everything. And there's like no efficiencies in that. And you really can make a really stressful, not exciting life through that. And I mean, why do we invest in anything really? It's to get some version of freedom in our life, financial freedom, and whatever that allows us to do because of that. I see a lot of people getting stuck in and myself at times too, is getting stuck in like all the different things that are out there and options. And
I know, and it's
painful, and it takes a lot of learning for people to figure that out sometimes. And often the simple way is just the best way. But like we said at the start, right? It kind of, everyone's got different goals and different thoughts around all that. So it's totally individual, case by case.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said about keeping it simple, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, I see so many, like I've seen a lot of, and I'm sure you guys have seen more people that have just quit with real estate completely. They went nuts or however their journey was, and then they're just done, right? Whereas this shouldn't be this awful experience if you build it right and you keep it, manageable, whether it's manageable or if you want to be big, but have systems in place and because this is a great strategy for retirement, for this is why we do it. And you don't want to hate it. You don't want to hate. Yes, it's a job, but
like becoming a real estate investor definitely afforded like a way different lifestyle, much more freedom than I could have ever imagined before discovering it. So you don't want to trade one job for another. Let's just put it that way, right? Like the whole idea of this is to have more freedom and build a true life, right? So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
And people that want to get in touch with you and your money, how would they do that?
Okay, so Michelle at greenridgeproperties.com. So GREENRIDGE properties, PROPERTIES.com.
Perfect. And as usual, we'll have that in the show notes. So anyone that's driving or whatever right now can't write it down, just click on the show notes and you'll see all Michelle's information in there. Sandy, got to unmute and then tell us how people can get in touch with you.
I'm unmuted. I'm muting because I got a dog in the background making some noise here.
Squirrel outside.
I will do my best to get this through. But Sandy at freedomreps.com is the best way to connect. And yeah, super thankful, Michelle. This was awesome. Appreciate it.
Back on mute.
That's right.
And people can reach me at rob@mrbreakthrough.ca. Okay, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.